All right, let's get started. Hello, hello. My name is Donna Weber, the customer onboarding expert, and I'm delighted to be here. And just want to give you a quick note. I am usually based in Palo Alto, California. Today I'm in a hotel room in Oklahoma City, so I'm kind of navigating between my laptop and my iPad, and so if you see me kind of going between different platforms, that is why. But I am excited to share with you about trust, which is the missing piece of customer onboarding. So I have a question for you, and I'd like you to share in the chat, which I have on my iPad so I can see. Do you meet resistance from new customers? Like just when you think that they're going to be most excited about your product, you find that they're resistant. They're not showing up for meetings. They're resisting your awesome product. They're not partnering with you. Type yes in the chat. We got Alexa shouting yes. Oh yeah, from Tatiana, and Kate screaming yes. So that looks familiar. Well, my goal for today's session is to share maybe why you're meeting some of that resistance and what you can do about it. And Audrey is saying yes for sure. Okay, so just a few things about myself. I'm a recognized customer success leader and strategist. Here's just a handful of companies I've worked for, and then I'm in my 6th year of running my own business. And here's a handful of companies that I've worked with to help optimize their customer success, customer onboarding, and help them drive their customers to value quickly. And if you haven't seen my new book, Onboarding Matters, is out. It's a bestseller. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to hear how much value people are getting from it. And then when I'm not helping companies drive their customers to value, I like to have adventures like whitewater kayaking. I was out there last weekend. You might notice a little bruise on my left cheek, which is from caps being upside down, hitting some rocks. Anyway, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. So let's dive in. So we're going to dive into neuroscience. Oh, and Tatiana's saying, love the book. Thank you so much. So we want to dive into neuroscience. So, let's look at why you might be meeting some of this resistance. And I got to tell you, while I am a customer onboarding expert, I am no expert when it comes to neuroscience. I've done a little bit of research, but I think it's really important because what happens is, we get a new customer. We think of them as an account, we think of them as revenue, a new logo, but really they're made up of people. And, people have brains, and their brains are all of our brains respond in ways we don't necessarily want, or that are a little bit beyond our control. So let's explore that a little bit. So, neuroscience is the study of the structure and function of the neurosystem and brain. And what does neurosystem have to do with onboarding? Well, a lot actually, because during onboarding, the brain science comes into play in these 3 areas: first impressions, confirmations bias, and buyer's remorse. So let's understand those 3 areas a little more. So what happens with first impressions is that, a lot of companies think, okay, we map out the customer journey and each of those touch points is equal. Like each of those touch points has like an equal weighting. But the reality is that the initial interactions have much higher weight because the brain sets the first and most impactful cognitive anchor, and then all subsequent learning is based upon that. So let's say your customer has this awesome sales rep. They love them. They have this really wonderful trusted relationship. They're vulnerable with them, and then suddenly they close the deal, and like they have no idea who's coming next. And so their first impression of the customer success manager or the onboarding specialist is negative. Whatever that person or the team does, they're going to be perceived through this negative lens. And inversely, if things start off well, then all that subsequent interactions is going to be through that positive lens. So the result is that people don't perceive the beginning of relationships objectively. Neurobiology predisposes all of us to automatically place more importance on first impressions. And that's why onboarding is so important. And I find it so fascinating. There's also something called confirmation bias, which is the tendency to interpret new information as evidence of one's existing beliefs or theories. So rather than necessarily kind of opening up ourselves up to new perceptions and ideas, we use it to validate what we're already thinking or feeling. Just going to check in for the chat. Great. All right. And so let's see. Seeking to confirm our beliefs comes naturally to us, and it actually feels counterintuitive to look for evidence that contradicts our beliefs. And that's, again, why these first impressions carry so much weight and why those initial judgments survive and spread. Okay. And so if you don't, I just want to go back to that. So if you don't get those new customers off on the right footing, you're going to be playing catch up forevermore. And then we also have buyer's remorse. So buyer's remorse is when, you buy something and you wonder if you made the right decision. And what happens is our brains start ruminating, and we I don't know about you, but when I buy anything, whether it's a pair of shoes or a car or a vacation or a product, like software for my business, I do the research, I talk to colleagues and friends, and I try to envision and imagine what that is going to be like to have that. And then what happens is I make that purchase, and then I start worrying whether I made the right decision. So type in the chat if you get buyer's remorse, and maybe something that you recently had buyer's remorse over. I mean, let's just say I go out for dinner, and I order my meal, and then of course the other person's meal always looks better, right? And Shereel is saying that perceived value from a tool or service you're buying is important. So let's see, what kind of things are you having buyer's remorse over? And while I wait for your feedback, the thing is, okay, Dustin's saying their last car. I hope the car worked out for you, Dustin. Athletic gear. Oh, right, yeah, because you can't return it after using it. The thing is with our buyers, they might be staking their reputation or even their job on the line by selecting your product. So it's really important that that we address what might be going on in their head, all those feelings and reactions that they're having. And Jennifer says that the more expensive the item, the more buyer's remorse, and that's true. But people have buyer's remorse even over ice cream cones, and the buyer's remorse comes to like $80 billion a year of goods collectively. So it's really a big deal. We need to acknowledge it. All right, now let's talk about prospection. It is when you create these stories in your head and you keep looping on it. All right. So for example, let's say you're booking a vacation, which a lot of us get to do these days. And so you book the vacation, you've looked at all the photos, the awesome beach view, the beautiful room, which looks really big when they take a photo of it with a wide angle lens. So you're imagining yourself there, right? And then you show up and you find out that the room is really tiny, and that beach view is really only available if you tilt your head and lean out the window. But your brain keeps cycling on that story that you created in your head. Okay. Anything else that anyone wants to type in about their experience with, as a consumer, with all of these first impressions, prospection, confirmation bias, buyer's remorse? Anything else anyone wants to share? Or what about anything you want to share around what you've experienced with new customers? And it looks like I'm not sharing my screen. So let me just try that again. Give me a moment. Are you able to see my screen? Let me do that again, just to make sure. All right, there you go. All right, so let's carry on there. So let's take a moment to talk about onboarding, which I believe is the key to customer success. Why is onboarding so important? Well, let's first define what onboarding is. Onboarding is the action or process of familiarizing new customers with your products and services. And that includes showing the path to success, setting appropriate expectations, driving customers to initial value, enabling customers on your solution, and maximizing lifetime value. And go ahead and take a screenshot of this because this is really important. Onboarding is not just about implementing your product. Onboarding is not just about going live with your product or providing your software. So onboarding is really developing this initial relationship with your customer and driving them to value, not driving them to going live with your product. And poor onboarding is the main cause of churn. There's all these different reasons why customers churn, but when you add a lot of them up, which equate to that onboarding experience, it comes to 62% of the reason that customers churn. And Service Source shares that if a customer doesn't become loyal within 90 days, there's typically only a 10% chance they ever will. So, as I just shared, all these things are going on, all these really complicated things that we can't even really, put our finger on are going on during onboarding. And if we don't address all of these needs, then customers churn, and often we don't really address a lot of this till we're ready to get to the renewal. And Heather is asking, is Service Source the source of the poor onboarding stats? No, it's not. I'll have to find the source actually. It's in my book. I'll have a look for that. I might have to get back to you, Heather, because usually I have my book right next to me at home, but I'm not at home today. All right, because of onboarding being such a vulnerable, important, critical period, I've developed the orchestrated onboarding framework, which includes 6 stages. And we're not going to go into this today, and I go into this in the book. I'll just give you a quick overview. But the goal of orchestrated onboarding is to build trusting relationships with your customers, to partner with them throughout their journey, to drive them to initial value, and then to maximize value. So the orchestrated onboarding journey includes stage 1, embark, which is where you really help the customers understand the path to success, usually even before the deal closes. 2, there's handoffs. And we're going to dive into this a bit more when we talk about building trust. But handoffs, which is internal handoffs to ensure that customer-facing teams, the post-sales teams, are really ready to partner with that customer successfully. They're set up for success. And then also having a customer handoff so that the customers' teams are really prepped and primed and know what was purchased and why and what's being expected of them. And we do all that even before we kick off. Most companies close the deal and they go right to the kickoff, which is usually very technical, which is all about milestones and dates and migrations of data and APIs, and it gets really overwhelming and tactical really quickly. And that's no way to start a relationship. So that's why there's 2 stages before the kickoff. Then we have adopt, which is all about the product implementation and customer enablement, change management, and then we get to the review, check in how things are going, and then expand, which is ongoing onboarding, where we're driving customers to lifetime value and getting new users onboarded, new organizations within an account onboarded, and new products and features that you roll out onboarded. All right, so that's just a quick overview of orchestrated onboarding. If you want to dive into that, I've got articles on my website, and my book details that and provides templates and resources for every stage. But the purpose of orchestrated onboarding is to build this great beginning of a customer relationship that will directly affect the final outcome. So rather than that resistant image we started off with, we want our customers leaping for joy, and I believe that the renewal happens in the first 90 days, not the last 90 days. So let's dive into building trust, and I'm going to relate some of this back to the orchestrated onboarding framework and things that are built in there to ensure we're building trust. Okay, so 4 areas: cognitive closure, continuity, small talk, and change management. So cognitive closure, let's start with there. So earlier I shared about how the brain keeps, this is prospection and rumination, and we keep looping and we keep telling ourselves these stories over and over. And we might have had some stories from the sales team, or from other people we've talked to. So the brain's going over these stories and stories. And what happens is we need cognitive closure, which is the breaking mechanism to those initial stories. And then we start the new stories of what happens after the sale. And so that's why it's really important to introduce the customer success teams, I believe, before the deal even closes, so that they can understand, customers can understand the journey that's ahead of them, and so that they know the path to success, because then they can start to build that new story and of how they're going to work with you. And that's also why we have these handoff meetings. So we have some internal continuity from the when the sales rep does a handoff to the post-sales teams, customer success, the onboarding teams, because when you don't have that continuity, one, you look bad. Two is the customers get really frustrated because they end up saying the same things over and over. So let's just say they spent weeks or months sharing all their, objectives, their goals, their dreams, their vision with the sales reps and the sales teams. And then the CSM or the onboarding specialist comes in and says, "Hey, tell me what's important to you." Like that is just so frustrating and disheartening. It's really important for building trust to come in and know what those customers' success outcomes, desired outcomes are. And you might be clarifying them and validating them, but you're not gathering them from scratch. So that continuity is really important. And then you also have that meeting with the customers teams, the customer alignment or the customer handoff, where they get some continuity from the buyer to the project team. So too often, and type in yes in the chat if this happens to you, where okay, it looks like I'm not sharing again. Hold on. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you, Annette. So type in yes in the chat if you, the buyer, the stakeholder, or it might be procurement, and you reach out to the project management, the customer's project team, ready to kick off, and they have no idea what your product is, why it was purchased, what you're doing there. Type yes into the chat. We're getting a few yeses. And so a customer handoff helps to alleviate that. So you get this continuity and alignment with the customer teams as well. All right, small talk. In our fast moving world where we're all driven by, metrics, do you take the time to talk with your customers? Type yes or no into the chat if you take the time for some small talk. All right, we're getting some resounding yeses. That's great to hear. And I got to say, I think this last year and a half with the pandemic, I think it helped us all slow down a little bit and connect on a personal level, connect with the people. Because we take the time. How are you doing? What's it like there? I don't know about you, but I work with people from all over the world, and it's an amazing opportunity to hear what's happening or not happening, or comparing stories, because we've all been having this common experience. And the thing, again, kids and dogs in the background help for sure, because I think we're all like more vulnerable, and we're all like showing up as imperfect, which I think is really important. But small talk is basically this opportunity to connect with people. And even though it seems kind of fluffy, it really helps to build trust. So something that I like to do before I have a meeting with someone, I always look them up on LinkedIn. I look and see if we have any shared connections. So let's say, hey, we both know Kate from One Guide. That's great. How'd you meet Kate? That's a great way to connect from some shared relationships. I like to see where they're located. So I maybe have some questions about that, where they went to school, I always like to understand a bit about their company, maybe see what's going on in the news. Maybe they just acquired a company, so I can ask them about that. So being curious. I had one person I met with, I looked on LinkedIn and they had a photo of themselves sitting at the top of Half Dome, the legendary, iconic granite dome in Half Dome. And I had hiked up to the top of that. And so we shared our shared passion around being outdoors. So, just taking a moment doesn't have to take over the conversation, but just like, 3 to 5 minutes of small talk, it really lubricates the conversation and builds trust. So then you can really partner for success. Alexa's sharing that they love seeing people's dogs and cats, best part of working from home. That's awesome. So you build some rapport, you break the ice, and you connect as people. And I just want to iterate from what I said earlier, like we're dealing with people who have fears and doubts, and what we've learned this last year, a lot going on besides, implementing and using our products. And so it's really important that we make that connection. And let's talk a little bit about change management. Now, some the companies I work with, their products, like, they get rolled out and they're pretty easy to incorporate into the customers' lives and businesses. But sometimes it's a big change to implement and use the product. It's not just about going live. You really need to address all the things around that, about how their work lives are going to change, about what expectations might be different. Just because they've rolled out your awesome product doesn't mean that they're going to get value from it. And you might need to explicitly help your customers to, make the announcements, the communication plans, help them understand how their daily lives are going to be different, help the users. We talk a lot about the account onboarding, but what about the users? Like, are there business users? Are there executives? Are there developers? Are there administrators? Are there people on the shop floor whose lives are going to dramatically change because they're going to be using your product? So it's really important to address that. And sometimes there's opportunities to provide additional services that even customers pay for, to make sure that they're not just, going live with your product, but they're really, seeing the impact as a result of it. And Tatiana is saying, yes, that is so hard. And yes, it is hard. And but it's important to start having some of those conversations. For example, one thing I do when I work with companies to optimize their onboarding frameworks is I have a Smartsheet project plan that covers a lot of the really important steps. So it's not just that, great, we've designed this awesome optimized onboarding framework, but now we need to implement it. And so I detail all that out and I give them that as a template. It doesn't mean I'm doing all that for them, but it just helps them understand, here are all the steps. And something just as simple as that, where you create a template of a project plan, and that, help guide them along that journey, might drive some help with that. And Tatiana says, especially when the product is a nice to have. So the choice to churn or to renew is determined during onboarding. And this is said by my friend and colleague, Ed Powers. Ed is a customer success expert based in Denver area. And Ed really enlightened me to the impact of neuroscience. And it's just so fascinating. I'm excited to keep learning there. And I'm very grateful to Ed to help me understand how important it is. And Tatiana is saying, Ed is awesome. So let's talk about how to build trust. We provide clear endings and beginnings. It's really important that people see the journey ahead. And, imagine you're going on like now that we can travel again, let's say you booked a tour with a company. You don't just want to hop on the bus on the first day and have no idea what's coming, not knowing where you're going. Let's say it's a 14-day trip. You want the itinerary, right? You want to know, like, here's what we're doing and why, and you want to have the map so that you know where you're going. You want to help the buyers know what happens after the deal closes. It's no longer enough just to close the deal. You really need to show the path to success. And what I'm seeing is companies that do that before the deal closes are actually closing are actually closing deals and shortening the sales cycle as a result, because people are wanting that. It helps customers to know you've got your act together, you've done this before, you're going to be partnering with them. 3 is get to know the people you're working with. They're people, it's an opportunity to connect. And if you slow down, if you don't just jump right into the kickoff, you're actually going to help all of those, implementation issues that happen down the road. Those are all going to go that much more smoothly. And then you want to help your customers make the change to using your product. So that is what I have. Please, let's connect. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop sharing. And I don't know if I can just share my screen. I think it will do that tunneling thing. So let me see if I can stop sharing. Yeah, there we go. So I would like to pause there, and we have about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. How can I, what can I answer for you, or what would you like me to dive into further? I'll ask you questions. I am curious, of all those things that I've shared, what have you tried? Have you tried, it sounds like we've tried the small talk. Have you acknowledged how important first impressions are? Okay, sure. So question is to bring up the slide about what is onboarding. Okay, so my question for you is, do you equate onboarding with the implementation? Or do you see it as an opportunity to really build a relationship? So Heather's saying it never occurred to think of it as greater than implementation. So that is my mission is to help people see that onboarding does not equal implementation. Onboarding is the beginning of a trusting and enduring relationship. All right, we got about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, we've got Audrey. Audrey's saying trying to manage, let me just, uh, looking professional to mirror the client's environment to some degree. Absolutely, that's really important. I always believe in showing up professionally, even though folks are more and more casual. I like to, just look a little more professional. And Amber's saying we're having a problem with customers attending onboarding sessions. I'm just going to stop sharing here. So when folks are not attending and showing up for onboarding sessions, when there's problems downstream, I like to address them upstream. So that includes letting them know even before the deal close or during a handoff meeting, well before a kickoff meeting, to helping them understand what's coming next, so they really know what they're accountable for, and not just kind of surprising them. And the other way to really get people to engage is to charge them for onboarding. When you charge them for onboarding, they show up for their meetings, they do what's needed. And I know there's a lot of controversy around charging for it. I advocate charging for onboarding and for customer success, because people are just way more accountable when they pay for something. And Amber loves that idea. So I think we're at the half hour. We got 1 more minute. Any last questions? So reach out, connect, and let me know how I can be of help to you and your company. Thank you, everyone, and I thank you for your active participation. And if we have just a moment, Lauren's asking, how do you drive adoption internally? That's that could be a whole session, Lauren, but that's a great question. A lot of it is, I don't know, reach out on LinkedIn and we'll continue. I don't want to go over time. Thank you.